Hey guys, welcome back to another episode in our simple farmhouse build series in SketchUp. Real quick, I want to apologize. Last time I didn't realize that I was recording in, well, how do I say this? I didn't have the full screen visible in my recording. The screen was being clipped on the sides and everything. I forgot to change the window size to fit the recording size. Hopefully it wasn't too big of an issue. You were still able to see everything that was going on. You just couldn't see like my sidebar here over on the side for your tags and stuff, and you couldn't see the tools. I did go through all the tools in the first couple episodes pretty thoroughly, I believe, so I think it was okay. Anyways, we're going to do better with that today. Also, I apologize that it has taken me so long to get another episode out. Apparently, which I'm not sure how this happened, but apparently last time, after that last episode, it didn't save. No idea why. I always save at the end out of habit, but I guess last time I forgot. So the entire floor system that we built in the last episode, I had to redo again. And then I was able to do this next episode. So that being said, there were a few changes that I made from last time because I realized I made a couple mistakes. I was trying to rush that episode to get it out. Noticed a couple things that I wanted to change. So primarily the big difference is right here where we did the opening for the stairway, right? Now, obviously we need to have an entry here coming in from the garage. If I open up the plans right here, 1 second. Okay. So you can see we have the entry coming in here from the garage. It has it spaced at 5'2" off of this wall here. That didn't really work. I came out with 5 foot, so I'm not sure. Like I said, sometimes these plans that you buy online are not going to be 100% accurate on all their measurements. That's why it's important that if you're going to just buy a set of plans off the internet, you do definitely want to verify all the measurements, and SketchUp is a great way to do that, I find. So let's talk about what I'm doing here. And I think the difference might have to do, well, maybe not. I can't remember now. It's been so long. I don't know if we did. Let's take off our subfloor and I'll show you the framing for the opening. But I don't remember what size we did for our exterior foundation wall. I believe it's an 8-inch. Yeah, 8-inch, and that's what the plans call for. So that was not the reason for our misalignment. I don't know. But anyways, so if you can see if I measure off of the interior wall here, sorry, the inside of the garage right here, which is where on the plans it was coming from. And I come over to, well, let's come to the inside. Right there. It's giving me 5 feet. It says about 5 feet. I'm not sure why it's off a little bit, but anyways, 5 foot. That's what we're at right there. We do have the extra 2 inches right here at the corner, which is not shown on the plans because we did go with a 6-inch stem wall for the garage rather than doing the 8-inch. So we do gain 2 inches there, but that's not the reason why we're missing 2 inches here. We should have gained that 2 inches regardless. So I'm thinking the plans may have just been off a little bit on that measurement or something. Oh, and you guys can't quite see that. Let me move that over a bit for you there. That should be better. Let's go ahead and extend that all the way up. So we're just going to go ahead and make this a 5 foot opening. You can see it's going from the inside of the doorway going to the stairs there, which is where I measured to on the model, and then over to this wall right here. That is that measurement right there, and it is showing us 5'2" for it. Not quite how it worked out. In any case, it's okay. 5 feet, 2 inches again isn't going to make a big difference. So I think the 5 foot is going to be enough for us. Let's, the other thing that I wanted to mention real quick from last time, in case you're following along, you'll notice the floor, the subfloor sheathing is a little bit different. I must have made a mistake last time in my rush, to get it done. And these sheets were not sized exactly 4 foot or something. I don't know, because in the last episode, I went back and watched it. Since I didn't have the saved model, I couldn't go back and check. But when I was watching in the last episode, I went back to see if I could pinpoint where that mistake was made. It looks like this sheet here started right there, just like it does here, this row. but it only came out to about right there. So I think we ended up somehow with a 6-inch shorter width on these sheets, which threw off a lot of the layout there with the subfloor sheathing. So I just want to point that out. If you're looking at this now, the subfloor sheathing is a little bit different. Make sure you got 4-foot wide sheets, which I do now, right? All of them are going to be 4 foot, except for this front row because it gets ripped. And then the back row also is going to be ripped, and that one ends up at about 3.5. This front row is going to be about 2'10". Okay. In any case, we still have all of our sheets landing on joists, the edges of the sheets landing on joists, as they should, including our blocking. So you can see, like right here where the stairs are, there's that block right there. Now watch, and let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it easier. But right there is where there's going to be a seam in the sheets for the subfloor. So you want to make sure that you have a block underneath that, and so on and so on. Now, when it came to framing out the stairway opening, you saw me do a little bit of that last time. When I shortened it to where it should be right there for the top of the stairs, it was not landing on a joist. That's fine. We threw in a little cutoff piece of joist. Hold on, let me move this around. And then I just added some 1 1/8" thick material to pack it out on each side. That is exactly the same width as our rim joist material, so you can use that very easily. You'll just have to rip it down to the right size, lay some of that on both sides, and you basically create yourself a small girder there. It's essentially a girder joist for the stair stringers to hang off of. You could also use just 2x material right there. You could probably do a double 2x12 or something like that to do that as well. But it is nice using the joist, because the joists are going, if you use a piece of your floor joist to create it, then you're going to have the exact 11 7/8 height that we want to match the rest of the joists. So I typically prefer to do it that way. Now, it looks like right now that this is just going to be left hanging out here in the open. It's actually not, because we are going to be bringing this wall up, and we're going to work on that today, doing the basement framing. But this wall is going to come up, and I will actually extend that just a little bit more, but it will rest on the top of that wall there to give it proper bearing on both ends of that piece. So let's go ahead. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And get started here. So I went ahead and I made a group for framing. So you can see if I already removed our subfloor from visibility, remove the slab, remove foundation wall, and remove the footing. We are left with all of our framing that we've done so far. The bottom plates, or sill plates, if you want to call them that. These are the pressure treated lumber that the walls get built on top of. The garage has just plates, and then the house has plates on the bottom with the joists, rim joists, blocking, all of that on top of those sill plates. But all of that is going to be considered framing, so I did put it all in a group with framing. As you can see, it gets turned off if I click off the framing group. The only thing that is not grouped then is our temporary layout objects down here in the basement. So we're going to work on that today and replace those with actual framed walls for the basement. So in order to do that, we're going to turn foundation back on. We can turn the slab on. We're going to turn... So within the framing... Actually, I'm just going to turn the framing off for right now. We're going to frame this basement in as a separate group, and then we'll combine the groups at the end. So I'm going to leave that off for now. All right, let's get started. So moving in here, the first thing I would do with any basement is frame all of the exterior walls. These are going to be all of the framed walls that go right next to the concrete walls all around the perimeter of the basement. So we'll start, these are all going to be 2x4 framed walls, 24-inch on center, because none of them are really load bearing. All of the load is being borne on the foundation. When it's that close to when it's at the edge of the perimeter of the building. So we're going to go ahead and do a 2x4 framed wall, but we are going to gap it off of the foundation wall by typically an inch is good enough. You can go as little as a 1/2 inch if you like. or you can go up to 2 inches depending on what your installation plans are. If you're planning on doing foam board installation for your basement, I would make that foam board installation continuous around the entire foundation wall. And I would prefer to do a 2-inch foam board foundation or installation. You could go with a 1-inch, which would work if we're just gonna do 1-inch gap off the wall. I think for this build, I think I'll go with the 1-inch. I want to try and get as much space out of it. I mean, it's not gonna make much of a difference either way. Honestly, let me think, is there anywhere where it might actually matter? The things you want to think about when it comes to that is kind of like closets, especially, or intersections of wall. They're not really anything particular in this layout or this floor plan design that's going to be a problem with doing 1-inch or 2-inch or 1/2 inch or whatever we want for that gap along the foundation. So let's just go with the 1-inch wall, and we're going to start framing this in right over here at this back corner. I think it doesn't really matter where you start. Pick an area. I try to always start in the same place on every build I do. So in this case, it's going to be the top left when I'm looking at it bird's eye view from the front, with the front being the bottom essentially. So the back left corner of the home is where I would start my framing and work from there. And that's just how I like to do it. It doesn't really matter. So first thing we need to do is get our spacing off of the foundation wall. So we're going to add some measurements here, some guidelines that are all spaced 1 inch off each of the foundation walls. So I'm just going to go around and add those in now, just like this. I'm just typing 1 for each one to give it 1 inch. So pull it out, type in 1, hit enter, and it gives me that gap. So let's do that here. We'll do that here. This one. Get this. All right. And that one. Okay, so now we have all that done. Now we can start to actually frame in these walls. So to do that, we're going to do our rectangle tool. I hit R for rectangle. Man, I'm getting a lot of spam calls today. Anyways, let's zoom in a little bit to make it easier to snap to that intersection of our guidelines there. And that'll keep us spaced off properly. And then I'm just going to pull this down. So what we would typically use is 16-footer pressure treated plates because these are going on concrete, the slab below. You want to use pressure treated here. And then let me see. So the first number is going to be the longer one, it looks like. So we're going to do 16 foot. And I'm just going to type it in, comma, 3.5, because it is a 2x4 wall, like I was saying. And then we'll hit enter. And that gives us a rectangle. Now we just need to push pull that up 1.5 inches. That gives us our 2x4 board, and I'm going to triple click on it to select all the faces and then make group, just like we've done with everything in the past. Give you guys a quick refresher on that. Okay, so now we've got our 16-foot 2x4 there. Again, this is pressure treated lumber. We'll identify all the pressure treated lumber later by coloring them. But for now, just make a mental note of that these are all going to be pressure treated for the bottom plates of these walls. Now, the next piece that I need over here is not, and actually, you know what? Let me see real quick. I probably do want to go the other way with this. So we're just going to move this one down on the green axis, 3.5. Okay, and then let's hit Q for our rotate tool. I'm going to hit Control so that it makes a copy of it. And then we're going to rotate this out just like that. When it hits that red axis, I know I've got 90 degrees. I can also look down here in the bottom right corner of the screen and it says angle is 90. So that's exactly what I want. Click that, hit M for move tool, and we're going to move that into place right there. That's where we want it. We still got our 1 inch gap off of the foundation wall, and that's going to go across here. So now we just need to continue putting our plates down all the way around. So I'm going to hit Control with the move tool so that it makes a copy, and move that copy right here to the end. Now you can see that extended past the foundation wall. So obviously we're going to double click on that to edit. And then we're going to use the push pull tool, and we want to push it back in till it's right on that guideline that we made. So we're 1 inch off the wall, and we're going to go ahead and place that, and then space bar to go back to our select tool, and just click anywhere out here in the empty space to get out of editing that specific 2x4. So moving right along, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video real quick. I'm going to go all the way around doing all of the bottom plates just like that, and then I'll come back and show you guys. Okay, so I got all of those bottom plates in. As you can see, we went all the way around. One note, when you're doing this, just to make things simpler, and this is usually how I would do it when framing in the real world, I would take the longest sides of the building and put those walls up first, and then do the shorter ones. So in this case, the back and the front walls of the home are going to go up first. So I did these ones back here, these ones across here, and that one across there. And then on the front, same thing, across the front there, the little alcove part there, and then across the front right there where the garage is. So you'll notice that in almost all, actually I didn't do it correctly here, so I'm going to fix that just because I like to stay consistent. Control Q to hide everything else, and then push pull, Control Q again to show everything else. And we are going to put that right there, and then this one is going to come out another 3.5 inches to right there. And you'll notice, let me zoom out a bit here. That's how I did it with all of them, essentially. The, well, let's say the horizontal ones, the long ones going this way, I did first, and then the vertical ones, or the ones perpendicular to those, are going to be in between them. So you can see that each one of these little perpendicular pieces ends butting into the longer side ones, if that makes sense. Same thing here. We got the short one in between a long one going across that way and a long one going that way. Over here, same thing. The short one lands in between that one and this piece here. So that's just the way I like to do things. For basement wall framing, it really isn't going to make a difference. The framers will decide however they want to do it. The important thing is that you have enough material for it, right? And that's why we're doing this in SketchUp, so that we can not only find design flaws, but that we can also get an accurate estimate of material needs. So that's going to be key. Now, we're not going to do any of the interior walls just yet. I want to go ahead and build the exterior walls first, and then we'll come back and do all the interior walls with the temporary layout that we put in there. That said, now that we have all the exterior walls in, I no longer need any of these guidelines. So we're going to go ahead and delete all of these. There we go. Now we need to do our studs. And actually, before we do the studs, we're going to do the top plates first, because it is extremely easy to do here, and then it'll make doing our studs a little bit easier. So what I need to do is select everything. Let's go ahead and hide everything else real quick. And then I'm just going to hold down Shift and come around and select all of the plates that I just made. Just like this. Select these, that one, get both of those, and then both of these here at the end. Okay, so now we have all of those selected. I'm going to hit M for move, and then Control to make a copy when I move it. And we are going to raise these all the way up. I do need to show the foundation again at this point. Let's go ahead and turn the slab on as well. Because I want these to match the height of the wall. So, and actually to do that, because they're spaced off the wall, it's going to be just a little bit easier if I put a line there. 3.5 works. It doesn't really, oh, did it not? My bad. I thought I did that. Go back to the 3.5 right there. Okay. That'll give me a point to bring these up to when I'm moving them, so that I can just snap them into place essentially. Actually, let's move that out 1 more inch, because I do want, oh, you know what? I just lost my selection. Huh. Okay, let's select this real quick. We're gonna move this out 1 more inch. Red axis, just hit 1, and that way it should line up exactly with the edge of our plates. So 1 second, let me select all the plates again, and then we will move those up. Okay, got those selected again. Let's turn on our foundation, and we can move that up now. So I'm going to hit M for move, Control, so it makes a copy. I'll just grab it on that point right there. And this should stay on the blue axis and hit that guideline that we made up here on top. The one that I moved, that I did 3.5 inches out and then moved it over 1 more inch to make it 4.5 inches. That's going to be the width of our 2x4 plus the 1 inch gap off the foundation. So it lines up exactly. You can see that I'm still on the blue axis there. And I'm just going to put the top of these copied plates right there so that they line up exactly with the top of the foundation. Now, actually, we do want the bottom of the plates to line up there. I just realized. So we're going to move that up another 1.5 inches on the blue axis, goes right there. And the reason for that is that if I turn our framing on again, you'll see that now they actually hit the bottom of the joist. I could have left it there because we're actually going to double up these plates. The top plates are almost always going to be doubled, even though it's not necessary for basement framing because none of this is structural. Well, none of these ones, the exterior walls, are going to be structural, except for the ones over by the stairs. Those technically will be, so you will want to make sure you have double plates there. But for, in general, basement framing, it's not super important that they have double top plates. But in this case, we're going to do it anyways. And so I could have just doubled that top plate and moved it up to the bottom. Instead, we're going to be doubling it. And so I hit Control and just moving it down so that now we have 2 of them right there, just like that. Now, normally you are going to need overlapping top plates. So you would want to go around and adjust. So now, let's say our first top plates there, let me turn off the framing again, is going to be exactly, it's going to mirror what our bottom plates are. So that means that this one here is going to butt into this one here, just like shown. But the top plate here would need to go the other way. So what you would want to do is come in here, you're going to move this over like that, and then just bring this one over like that. So if you want to get real technical and have this framed in SketchUp exactly like it would be in the real world, that's how you would want to do it. Go around and adjust all of the intersections or overlaps just like that for all of them. However, we can just leave it like that. It's really not going to be a big deal as far as the model goes. We're still going to be able to build everything and get a material count. So it really doesn't matter unless you want to get super technical with it as far as just doing this SketchUp model. But yeah, in the real world, you will want to make sure that all of those overlap. Right here, you're going to want to bump these back at least 4 foot. What I would do is move the top one right here, move this back over here 4 feet, and then this one here that's on top is going to extend those 4 feet over. And you'll just want to make sure you don't go over 16-foot length to the end. So if it does go over 16-foot length, which I think it would, let me see how long that was. No, it actually wouldn't. It would be 15.5 if we move it 4 feet, make it 4 feet longer. So we would still be okay with that. Anyways, I'm not going to waste the time doing all that right now because it's really not necessary. What are these lines up here from? I'm not sure where those came from. But anyways, we don't need any of these at this point, so we're going to delete all of those. So now we have our bottom plates and we got our double top plate. It's time for studs. So I'm going to come in here and we're just going to start once again back here in the back left corner, hit the rectangle tool, and we're going to do a little 1.5 by 3.5 rectangle here. So 1.5 comma 3.5 gives me the profile I want for the 2x4 stud, and then we're just going to drag that all the way up to the top plate. And that's why I said it's easier if you do the top plates and bottom plates first, then go back and do all your stud, fill it in with all your studs, because you can just drag the stud right up to the plate. And we will now make that a group, and we have our first stud. Okay, and you can see we are maintaining our gap off the foundation wall on both sides. which is important. We don't want any of our lumber to be within a 1/2 inch of that concrete. You definitely don't want it touching. I prefer to stay at least a 1/2 inch off. So let's go. And in this case, we are doing a 1 inch gap, not just a 1/2 inch. So hit Control with the Move tool and select that stud so we can move it over. And as I said previously, we're going to be doing this with 24 on center spacing. So I'm going to hit 24. Actually, technically, it should be 20 for your first stud bay. You typically would do 23 1/4. This way, if you're doing drywall, whatever, sheathing, for the basement framing, it's not as big of a deal, but normally you want to make sure that you're keeping a 16 on center or a 24 on center layout. And that typically means that your first spacing from the end stud to the next stud is going to be half of whatever the width of your studs are. So in this case, studs are 1.5 inches. So half of that is going to be 3/4 inch. We would want to move it back 3/4 of an inch, and that's going to get us on layout. And then from that point forward to the end of this wall, we will be doing 24 on centers there. So let's do our 23.5. And like I said, for this basement wall, this corner is going to be buried anyways, so you're not going to have sheetrock going all the way to the edge of this wall, right? Because it's going to hit this wall here. So it's actually going to be buried anyways and not make a difference, but it's just a really good habit to get into doing that, because if you don't, you are very likely to forget that at some point. So if you're doing framing yourself, super important concept to understand. If you're just designing this in SketchUp and you're going to be hiring a framer, I would still do that because that's the way they are going to build it, most likely, if they know what they're doing. So anyways, 23.25. And then hit enter, and that is our spacing there. Okay, from there, I'm going to hit Control again, so it makes a copy when I move this. And now I'm just going to go 24. That's good. And then we're going to hit the little star key to multiply that by, let's see, how many studs do I need there? Let's try 15. Oh, it moved it. Oh, because I zoomed out, it removed my, hold on, let me do that again. It removed my multiplier. So Control to make a copy, move it down on the red axis so we're staying on top of or in between our top and bottom plates. And then I'm going to hit 24, enter, and then times 15. That gives us 15 studs going all the way across, and that was too many. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two right here. And one of them got buried in the wall. So we're going to turn off the foundation wall for a second, which actually we could just leave that off at this point. We don't need the foundation wall showing anymore because we have our plates to show us where to put all the studs. So we will just follow those. So I'm going to go ahead and put that stud there. And you can see that our stud bay here at the end, or our studs are only going to be 1 foot 5 1/4 inches apart, which coincidentally matches exactly. Or no, it doesn't. But that would be for 16 on center spacing. But anyways, gives us a smaller space than what our stud spacing is what I was trying to say. It's going to be less than our 24-inch spacing, which is fine. So whatever that ends up being, we're just going to stick with that. Now there's one more thing we want to add to this wall, and that's going to be our California corners, is what they're usually called. So I'm going to come in here, we're going to select this, I'm going to hit Q for the rotate tool, Control so it makes a copy, and then I'm just going to drag that straight out on the green axis and click it, and then rotate 90 degrees to the red axis right there, and you can see it says 90 down in the bottom corner. Click again. So now I've got this copy of the stud here that has been rotated 90 degrees. I'm just going to move that right over there up against that stud. And that gives us our corner for insulation. So we can still get insulation all the way back in that corner. As you can see, there's plenty of space behind that stud. But this also gives us plenty of nailing surface for the stud of this wall here that's perpendicular to land on. So we can nail that end stud into these studs here. And it also gives us this little bit that sticks out once the stud for this wall is put in place, which I'll go ahead and show you now, actually. Why not? So we can actually just copy this one, but I want to grab the back corner right there, copy it by hitting Control, and then we're going to move it right there, right? So that's where the last stud of this perpendicular wall will land. And you can see that this one that we put in right there is going to stick out a little bit. That's for the drywall, for the sheetrock to be nailed into in that corner, because when they come in here and drywall this basement, they're going to run the sheets, you know, something, this is not exact, but just to give you an example, the sheets are going to run like that. They need something to nail the edge of that sheet, or screw screw the edge of that sheet into when they hit that corner. So that's why you need to have that extra stud in there that's perpendicular to the other studs. That's called a California corner because it allows for insulation to get back in there, increasing energy efficiency, and that is standard practice with framing these days. So all we need is to move a copy of that down to the other end as well. It's going to go right there like that. Perfect. And then we will move a copy of that onto this next perpendicular wall, just like we did at the other end. And that gives us our full corner there where the walls meet. Okay, now we are going to need additional blocking right here in this section for this wall to die into. It needs to be nailed into something, so you can either put additional studs in there for it to land on, or we can do some what's called ladder blocking going across like this, and that is what we will end up doing, that. But I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to wait and do that when we're doing the interior walls. So let's go ahead and continue over here. Let's do move, control for a copy. We're going to move this one out. Now again, we want to do 23.25, not 24, because it is our first stud bay of that wall. It's going to be a little bit shorter. And then from there, we'll hit control again so it makes a copy. Now we can go 24 inches. We're going to do times 2. And then we'll just adjust this one because it does end up being long. We're just going to move that right back. Let me zoom in a little bit. Right back to right there. Okay, and that gives us our entire wall for right there. Now we need to do this next wall going around, so I'm just going to grab one of these, M for move, control to make a copy, and I'm going to grab this corner here, and we're going to line that right up with the end of the bottom plate there, right up against the stud of the perpendicular wall. And once again, we do need a piece coming or a stud coming out perpendicular from that for the corner. And that is, in this case, we have an outside corner. So I showed you how to do the inside corners. This one's going to be an outside corner. So it's not so much for the insulation in this case, but, well, it is, because we do want to get insulation there. But primarily, we also need the nailing surface to attach those walls together. So we're going to put a stud in just like that, just like we did before. Let me zoom out here. Okay, and now we got our wall there, and what this would do, if this was an above ground wall, we would now have a nailer for our sheathing there on the outside. But in this case, because there's a concrete wall right there, we're not going to have any sheathing on the outside of these stud walls. It's essentially just for this wall to get nailed into this wall, directly into that stud. So let's go ahead and let me select that stud, and then we'll move, control for copy. We're going to move this over again, 23.25. And then we'll move it one more time, hit control so it does a copy, 24. And then we're going to multiply that by, I don't know, like 10 or something. Oh, I forget. When I zoom out, it cancels my multiplier. So let me try that again. Move that, 24, check, times 10. Let's see where that got us. Oh, that was perfect. Nice. Okay, good guess. All we need to do, though, because you can see this didn't make it all the way to the end, so we're just going to make a quick copy of that and add one more stud to the end, just like that. And then we do need our perpendicular stud again as well, just like we did on the other end. So let me grab one of those. Let's go, kind of need the other corner. Let me just grab this one over here then. So control to make a copy, and then we'll move that copy over to here. Nope, not right there, in here, like that. Now you can see it's overlapping that stud that we put right there. It's not a problem. All we got to do is move this stud over. Let me select it to make sure I'm grabbing the right thing, and then we'll just move that over so it's right up against that one. And there we go. Okay. Now we'll do this other little side. Let me just grab these. So this is going to make it a lot faster. I'm just going to copy all of these with the move tool. Copy. And yeah, we'll just grab it right there is fine. Anywhere would have worked because we're just going to drag it straight across on the red axis. You can see the red dotted line. So I am on the red axis and we're just going to apply that right there like so. Now we need to do this little short wall coming off over here. So what I'm going to do to make this a little faster, we're just going to come over here and we're going to grab that, hold down shift to select some additional studs. I think that's probably enough. M for move, control to make the copy. We're going to copy that. We're going to drag that all the way over to here. Okay, so now you can see I've got all my studs in place. We just needed a couple more. I really needed one more and then the corner. So we're going to go ahead and select just one stud, move, copy, move that over. We're going to do 24. And then we will make one more copy and move that over to here. Then I'm going to grab this one, move, copy. We're going to grab it by that corner right there. And that's going to place right there. Perfect. And that's it for that wall. And now we need to continue around. So let me, I think you guys get the idea now. I'm going to pause real quick so you don't have to watch me do all of it. I'll finish out doing the exterior wall studs, and then I'll be back and we'll continue from there. Okay, and there we go. You can see we have all of our exterior walls for the basement framed in. Studs all 24 on center. We got our California corners at every corner. One thing I want to mention, so when you have plates, your bottom plates, top plates, that split right there, ideally you want either that butt joint of the bottom plates and the top plates to land right in the middle of a stud, or what you can do, and I actually prefer this method, we'll throw a second stud in right there, and then those two studs get nailed together. That wall is never going to separate. So I'm just going to go around real quick to where all of my seams are. You can see that this one already landed right in the middle of a stud, so that one's okay. Let's come around to the back here. There it is right there. That one landed right in the middle of the stud, so that's okay. Most of them will, if you do your layout correctly with the 16-foot plates and then your studs, stud layout on 16 centers or 24 centers. They should typically land right on the seam of the plates, just like this. So I don't need to double up those studs in very many places. But if they don't land on layout, like this one right here isn't even close, which is fine. That'll happen. We're just going to move this over and then grab it at the midpoint and put that midpoint right over it like that. And let me come on this side. That one is right in the middle of a stud. Okay, looks like everything else was good. So it was really just this one that, for whatever reason, the stud landed right on the edge of it, which is a little bit odd. Oh, right, because I did the 16-footer was on this end, right? I think that's what it was. Let me check, just because I'm curious. No, that was the 1410, so that means this one here was our 16-foot. Okay, that is a little weird. It should have landed on the seam, actually. So let's double check that. When you're going through building these models, a lot of times you'll see little discrepancies like that. That could be a clue that you messed up somewhere, did something. And so you can see this is actually a perfect example of why you need to start. I was going so fast I didn't realize I forgot to do the 23 1/4 for that first stud bay, and instead we ended up with 24. So that didn't work out. Let's go ahead, and I think that was the one that I added, right? So let's delete that one, and then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select all of these studs, as well as the ones at the end. So that one. And we're going to move all of these over 3/4 of an inch. So 0.75, move that over 3/4 of an inch. So now we should have 23, 1 foot 11. is 23 inches, right? And then a quarter. So it's 23 1/4 inch. And you can tell that we are on proper layout now because of this right here. Our seam in the bottom plate landed, and the top plate, if you look at the top plates, landed right in the middle of that stud. And that's what we want to see. That lets us know that our layout was correct everywhere. So that was the case going all the way around, except for that one spot where I had to add the extra stud. Let's look at that real quick just to verify that we didn't miss anything there. Where was that? I don't even remember now. Not that one. I lost it. Not that one. What about this one over here? Where was the seam here? Right there. So it wasn't that one. Must have been this end wall. Yes, it was. Okay. The reason that this one didn't land, and we're going to correct it. So actually I'm going to delete that because I know why that didn't end up. So when I was doing my stud layout, I always do it standing from the inside. I go left to right. Okay. So if I'm standing in the middle of the room that I'm framing, which in this case is just going to be the middle of the basement. So I'm standing inside. I want to do layout going left to right. I always do left to right. That way it keeps me straight no matter what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. I mean, it's always going to be left to right, and I just know that. Okay. So the first one from the starting on the left end, the first one is going to be our short one. That's 23 1/4 in this case. And then it's 24 on center from there. But because I started with the bottom plate at the beginning, and this is why when you're doing your bottom plates, top plates and whatnot, it is also important to start in a corner and go clockwise. I broke that cardinal rule, which actually turned out great because I can show you an example of why you don't do that. You always want to start in a corner and then go clockwise around the whole structure, because then what I would have had is the 16-foot plate. Let's go ahead and select our top plates as well. Oh, I already did the overlap on that other plate. So we're only going to select the bottom top plate. These should have been starting from the left end with the 16-footers, and then whatever was left over would go after that, right? Now, yeah, so we're just butting into this. So I'm going to land it right there, but I'm going to move it up just a bit so I can still easily grab these ones here. Without getting anything in the way. We're going to move these down to the end. So I'm going to grab it at the end right there, and we're going to bring that straight down on the green axis. We don't want to leave the green axis, and I'm not going far enough, so we need to bring it all the way down to here. Place that there, and then I can select these 16-footers again, and we will move those right back into place. Like so. If I can get the corner in there, there we go. Okay, so now everything lands on layout. We're good. We don't have to put an extra stud in or anything. Good to go. Now you can see that that automatically gave us a really nice overlap for our top plates, right? So we got a seam in the first top plate, the bottom top plate, and then the seam for the secondary top plates, the ones that are on top, lands way over here. So that way they are offset a minimum of 4 feet. That is code. And it gives us a really nice overlap for our top plates. As I was saying earlier, not super important for doing the model here unless you want to get very specific and technical with the way you're building it, being just like it would be done normally in real life, that is. So anyways, now we got our entire exterior wall framing in. Let's see. Wow, we're already over 40 minutes on this recording. The time flies when I'm doing these models. They do take some time, especially when I'm taking the time to explain what I'm doing. I do move a lot faster when I'm not doing the recording because I don't have to explain everything. But I think the videos lately have been a little too long, so I kind of wanted to make them a little shorter. I want to try and stick to an hour or less. So what we're going to do now to finish off this episode is we're just going to put our blocking in. So we're going to do ladder blocking for anywhere where there's intersecting walls, okay? The way we do that, I need to make some marks first. So we're going to come, let's see, 16 inches. Do I do it off the floor or off the plate? It doesn't really matter. Either way is fine. Let's go off the floor for this one. So from the floor, we're going to come up on the blue axis, and we want to come up 16 inches. Okay. Then from there, that gives us the point at which we want to place our blocking, our first piece of ladder blocking here. Let me get zoomed in a bit so I can actually make the, so that's going to be, let's see, the bigger numbers first. We're going to do 3.5, oops, I hit a 2 on accident, and then comma 1.5. That's going to give us our 2x4, which is what we use for this blocking. And I'm just going to pull that right over to here, triple click on that, make it a group, and now we have our blocking. Now what I'm going to do is make a copy of that with the move tool and just move it up. We're going to go another 16, and then we're going to multiply that by 4. And that should give us a total of 5. Actually, I did want a 6th one up there, didn't I? Let's do one more there. Did I do 9-foot ceiling height for this, or 8-foot? I don't remember now. 16. It's been so long since we did the foundation. Let me check real quick because I'm curious. Are these 8-foot or 9-foot walls? I think they're 9-foot. Yeah, because an 8-foot wall, you only need 5 blocks for ladder blocking. But if you go to a 9-foot wall, you are going to need a 6th block up there. But basically, that gives us our blocking. Do I need that anymore? I guess for the other side. No, there's no intersecting walls over there. So never mind. I don't need that guideline anymore, so we're going to remove that. But that is our ladder blocking. So that this wall, when we frame in this wall right here, you'll see the last stud of that wall is going to land right on that blocking, so it'll get nailed into that blocking, each one of those blocks, to secure this little piece of wall that's perpendicular to the main wall, the exterior wall here that we've already framed. So that is the purpose of the ladder blocking. At this point, it becomes very simple because we did everything 24 on center spacing. I can just grab all of these, move tool, make a copy. Oh, before I do that though, I do need a guideline on the other side so I know the height to place it at, because I'm not going to be able to move it straight over. So for example, we're going to need some blocking right here for this intersecting wall. So let's go ahead and do our 16 right on the blue axis. 16 up, give us a guideline there. We're going to have a wall ending right there, so we're going to go ahead and do one right there as well. Oops, I'm doing it off the top of the bottom plate though, and I wanted to go off the floor, the concrete slab. So from there, 16 on the blue axis gives us another guideline. We're going to have 2 stud bays here with the ladder blocking in them. So let's come up. 16 gives us our guideline there. We're going to need some on this end wall over here, so off of the floor. Oops, blue axis, please. 16 gives us that. And actually, we have 4 of them, 4 walls intersecting with this exterior wall at this end. So we'll have a lot of ladder blocking there. And then it looks like the last spot is going to be this wall here. So we'll do 16, gives us for that one right there, as well as this one right here, both intersecting with that wall. Do we need one there? Yeah, I guess we do. So we'll do one more right here, and I can just go there, click on that, and it gives me the same height, 16 inches. Boom. Okay, so now we can select these blocks, move tool, control for a copy, and then we're going to move it using the bottom one because we want to line it up with those guidelines that we made 16 inches off the floor. So I'm going to click on the corner of that block there, and we're going to move right over here. Oh, I should have done the corner on this side though, so we can line that up. There we go. And that gives us that one. Then once again, control with the move tool to copy it, and we're going to move that right over to here. These ones are going to be a little bit long, so I'll fix those in a second, because this first stud bay again is 23¼ inches wide, not 24. You see, yeah, everything else there was good. Let's select that again, copy, select that corner. We're going to move that over to right here. And then we also need some on this side as well. So we're going to put it right like that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you could just add extra studs in here. You basically make a little U shape with the studs, and that gives you something to land your wall on. The only problem with doing that is then you can't get insulation back in there in that little U shape. I'll show you real quick. Actually, that'll be easier. So the alternative method of doing this, you would have a 2x4 stud coming across like that. So let's do 3.5, 1.5 would be just like that. and then you would have a stud coming out this way, 1.5, 3.5, and you would have a stud coming out this side, which again, 1.5, 3.5 gives us our 2x4 stud. So that is the other way that you could do it right there. And you would want to pack probably some foam board insulation inside that empty space that's going to be left right here, because you're not going to be able to access that once the wall is built to put insulation in there very easily. Now, because this wall is spaced off the foundation, because it's a basement wall, it is spaced off the foundation an inch. You could technically, I guess, shove some insulation back in there, but it's not going to work very well, and it's going to be really tough to do. So if you are going to go with this method, I highly recommend you put some foam board insulation in there and just build yourself a whole assembly there to butt this wall into. I don't like doing it that way though. I prefer to just do ladder blocking. Makes insulating way easier, and it also uses less material typically, and it still gives you plenty of nailing surfaces for your sheetrock. Technically screws, not nails. Nobody uses nails for sheetrock anymore. But anyways, where this wall intersects, you will still have places to screw that sheetrock in all the way up that wall. And that is the key, is providing nailers for your sheetrock so that it can be properly attached per code. It's not just about attaching the walls together. So you want to keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and grab these now with the move tool again. Control for a copy. I should have grabbed the other corner though. And of course, because I hit escape, it unselected it. So let's select those again. All 6 of them. And move. Control, we want to grab it from this corner. And now we're going to go to the back here. I'm going to place that right there. Again, it's going to be too short because we had to move this stud over off of layout in order to make room for that corner, which is fine. Like I said, with the other one, we'll just shorten all of those a little bit. I'll do that later though. So let's grab that. I think we had one more over here. Yep. And again, this one's going to be these blocks are going to be a little bit long for that stud bay. Not a big deal. We'll fix it. So now I've got all of my front wall and back wall done. So we need to rotate. So hit Q and then Control to make a copy. And then we're going to draw a line straight down on the green axis. And then we're just going to rotate after clicking. Rotate it all the way to the red axis, which is 90 degrees. Click again. And now we have our copies that have been rotated 90 degrees. We can just move those straight into place. So I'm going to grab it on this corner here. And we're going to come back here, place there. Another copy of them right there. Copy again. We're going to bring that over to here. Copy again. And we're going to bring that to right there. Okay, so now we got those ones. Now I'm going to come to the back of it. I want to grab that right there. Control for a copy. And we need to move those right. Oh, I didn't put a guideline on that. My bad. Okay, let me do that real quick then, because it's going to be easier. I could go ahead and move the blocking over here, then make the guideline, and then move the blocking into place. I think it's less work to do it this way, though. These are still selected, so all I have to do is hit M for the move tool, Control to make the copy, and then we will move that right over there. Okay, did I forget any? Oh, I did. I didn't do that one there. Let's go ahead and grab these again, Control for a copy, and we're going to put them right there. And again, they're too long, so they will need to be shortened. Did I forget anything? Looks like we got it all. Okay, so the last step here then, to finish off the episode for today, we're going to go in and shorten all these blocks so that they are not too long. Not technically necessary for just doing this model in here. But again, I'm a little bit OCD and I like to make sure everything is done just like I would do in the field typically, which does mean I do even typically overlap my top plates correctly so that they have at least 4 foot overlaps at all the joints. but that would take a lot of extra time in this, so I'll probably do that later. I might do that before the next episodes just so that it's done. But like I was saying, it doesn't really make a big difference if your only purpose for doing this is for design purposes and material count. We will shorten each of these, and you can see how this would take just a minute to go around and do all of them. Not too long, a little bit tedious, but that is SketchUp. When you're building these houses in SketchUp, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff like this where you just have to adjust a whole bunch of small things repeatedly. You could do components with this. I think I mentioned that in previous episodes, where instead of making these a group, you could have made them a component, and then editing one of them would edit all of them. Just make sure that you're making only these ones components, not all of the blocking together components, because then editing these ones would also change the size of all the other blocking to the exact same thing, which would not be what you want. So do make sure if you do components that you are only making these ones here a component, and that, you know, all the ones that are similar, make sure that those are just the ones that are being components and not all of the blocking. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix all of these, and I'll be right back. Okay, I think I got them all. It took me a grand total of about 1.5 minutes to do all that. Maybe a little less. I wasn't really paying that close attention to the seconds, but about a minute just to go around and fix. I had to fix those ones there, fix these ones here, fix the ones right here, and I think that was it. So we got all of our ladder blocking in now for the intersecting walls. We can go ahead and remove our guidelines. We're not going to need those anymore. All right, and that should do it. We can turn our foundation wall back on if we want, and you can see now what it looks like with the framing up against the foundation. Well, not technically up against it, but, you know, it gapped off the wall an inch, so almost right up against the foundation wall, all the way around. We have our ladder blocking in for the intersecting interior walls. Yeah, everything looks really good here, and that's basically how we do our basement framing for the exterior walls. Again, you would usually, and we'll do insulation later, what I would do is come in here and add 1-inch foam board insulation behind all of this stud framing up against the concrete. That's going to insulate your basement the best. You could also do spray foam, but a lot of people nowadays don't like the spray foam too much. It does have off-gassing and concerns with that. So foam board is a really good answer. You just put in your 4x8 foot sheets of 1-inch foam board, blue board, some people call it, and then you can tape the seams so that it actually becomes a vapor barrier as well for you, which is highly recommended in most environments. So yeah, go ahead and put the foam board in there, tape all the seams with foil tape or some other sort of tape that's made for that application, and you're good to go. But we'll talk about insulation more later. For now, we're just doing the framing. And you can see we got all that done. So next time, that's gonna do it for today's episode. Next time we're gonna come in and we'll do all the interior framing. It works basically exactly the same way. We're just gonna run all the framing. We'll do the longest walls first. So you can see like this wall here is gonna be a load-bearing wall. This wall here is gonna be a load-bearing wall. So those are both, and then this one here is a load-bearing wall as well. Those are all gonna be 2x6 framing. Everything else will be 2x4 framing. And so we'll build those next time. We'll get the basement completely framed out. With the interior walls, we will also have to do doorways with headers. Headers for basement framing is very simple. For the most case, these load-bearing walls, you will want to do engineered specified headers. If you're not using engineering for your plans, which I highly recommend you get them engineered, even if it's not required, I would still get them engineered. I understand it's an additional cost, but it is well worth it, in my opinion. But if you're not getting engineering for load-bearing walls in a basement like this, I would typically go no smaller than a 2x6 header, and you're probably actually going to want like a 2x8 or 2x10 header just to be safe. Could be oversized depending on your specific loads and all that. That's why the engineer is very helpful. But if you're unsure and you want to play it safe, go with like a 2x10 header. Super simple. It's going to be more than enough for basement framing in just about every case. But we'll talk more about that next time and go over all the interior framing. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. I apologize. I have not been keeping up with getting new episodes out. It's just been a very busy year. Fortunately, we are into the winter months now. Work has slowed down a little bit. I finally, I'll go ahead and mention this here. I finally finished writing the book that I've been working on for trying to get it done for the end of 2025. So I am releasing it here at the beginning of January in 2026. I've submitted it for publishing on Amazon. It's being reviewed right now. Should be out within the next few days. So I'll probably make a video about that. The book is about a real estate investing strategy that I'm using that nobody else talks about, and so that was kind of my reason for writing the book about it. I wanted to, inform other people of the strategy because I think it could be helpful to a lot of people. It's a really, really solid retirement strategy with real estate investment. And since nobody else talks about it, I decided to go ahead and put the effort into writing the book about it. I put that out. So that was taking up a lot of my time recently. Now that that's done and out of the way, I have a lot more time to focus on making content for this channel. So expect to see more regular videos with this build series in SketchUp. And then I also have a lot of video clips, over 1,000 video clips from everything we've been doing work-wise this past year on the A-frame. Yes, we are still working on that A-frame. There's been delays here and there. I can talk about that more later. But anyways, we are still working on that. I have a lot of videos from that, a lot of recordings from that build that I need to throw together, edit, and then I'll upload those to the channel so you guys can continue seeing those. I had a couple other projects, smaller projects like the deck on my house and things that I also have recordings of. So I'm going to try and get those edited and put those out there, finish the garage series. I don't know how many people were that interested in the garage build series. But anyways, I do have recordings for that as well that I will put out. The recordings that are left for that are basically going to be involving doing the electrical wiring, doing the insulation, doing siding, doing drywall on the inside. I don't think I did the video of the roofing yet, so I have a little bit of the roofing as well that I'll put a video out on. So I got lots of interesting things if you guys are watching that series as well. But anyways, we'll have a lot more content out here over the next few months at least for you guys. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this or even suggestions. I am not an expert at SketchUp. I don't know everything. So if you guys know something that I don't involving SketchUp or building these models in here, or if you caught anything that maybe I made a mistake on. Obviously, I made mistakes in the last episode when it came to framing that opening for the stairs. So anything like that, if you caught something that I missed, please let me know in the comments. I really appreciate it. Or if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer questions and help you guys out. So that's it for now. I will see you guys next time for the next episode when we do the interior basement framing. Have a good one.